there's that romantic notion around speaking. It has to be big. It has to be in front of thousands of people. And I was like, actually, no, you can speak in front of 10 people and have an impact. So if you challenge your audience and you get them to do something a different way, then that's the talk worth giving. It doesn't have to be a Gandhi type movement, right? It can be something small, something incremental that they change.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Value Whispering podcast. I'm your host, Melitta Campbell, business coach, value whisperer, and advocate for introverted female experts who want to build a business that feels natural, authentic, and impactful. Each week on this show, I explore what it really takes to create a quietly impactful business, one that thrives through meaningful marketing, value-driven sales, and self-leadership. So if you are ready to attract your dream clients, sell with confidence, and create lasting success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Today in this episode, I'm joined by Elliot Kay, speaker coach, founder of Speaker Express, and champion of purpose-driven communication. Together, we explore the often overlooked power of speaking, especially for introverted business owners, and how the stage can become a platform for influence, impact, and connection. From debunking myths around introversion and public speaking to sharing practical tips on storytelling, stage presence, and finding your voice, this conversation is packed with insights to help you step into your message and own your story with confidence. And I know this is one episode I have enjoyed re-listening to and taking notes, so I know you're in for a treat. So, hi, Elliot. It's great to have you with us on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm excited for this conversation. And I know I always say that, but genuinely, because I am a big believer that speaking is a great way to really hone your stories, grow your influence, and start building meaningful relationships. And there's this big myth that introverts don't belong on stage, but actually, I'm always surprised at how many speakers and comedians and actors and entertainers are introverted. So we will dig into how we can use that stage literally to grow our influence, bring in the right clients, and have an impact we feel proud of. But before we dive into all of that, I'd love it if you could share a little bit about your story with the audience.
Sure. Which part of my story do you want me to share?
How did you get to, well, everything you do now? Because you're coaching speakers, you have the speaker awards, you've got several brands. And I think that in itself is an interesting strategy. So we can dive into that as well. But how did you come to do what you do today?
Yeah, I guess it's almost your cliche typical. So I was at the time I was a trainer. I worked with some really big brands in the UK. I designed their customer service training, their customer service manuals, and I wanted to be a better trainer. So I ended up looking into coaching, and because I looked into coaching, I got invited to seminars, and I sat there watching this person on stage, 5,000 people. It wasn't Tony Robbins. Before that's the name that's flung about. And I went, oh, I can do that. And then literally walking out that night, someone was standing there with speaker training flyers, come to our speaker training course. I went. It was a very busy week that week. And then I enrolled on their speaker training and I become one of their speaker trainers. Over 5 years, I did that. And then I've been doing it ever since. So in that respect, it's kind of like, I mean, that sounds really condensed. It was a bit more gradual than that. And then we launched Speaker Express. At the time, my co-founder and I, that was 2011. We launched that. Speaker Express is going now. But that's how I ended up in speaking and really and then really honed in on it. Because as you know, I always seem to run many brands, and that's another conversation we'll get to. I'm actually pulling them all in now. In 2018, I stopped doing my other stuff and went into Speaker Express full time. And actually raised investment, but then the pandemic happened, and then we all kind of know what happened next. So that's a nutshell of my story of how I do what I do today. And I really, really love doing it. And I think one of my gifts is my ability to see the speaker in other speakers that they don't always see in themselves and really pull out their story so they tell it in a way they've never told.
Yeah, it's just such an amazing skill to have that.
Mm.
You talked about how you saw people speaking and you thought, I could do that.
Yes.
The people that you coach to speak, is that a typical reaction? Because I was thinking, well, that's really cool. But when I saw people speaking on stage, my thought was, that is so cool. I would love to be like that. But I hadn't actually projected that on myself at all. That came several years later.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said at the beginning, I just want to also address that about introverts and stage.
Mhm.
The key difference with introverted speakers is it takes you longer to get yourself stage ready, hyped, or, in state. It just takes you longer to do it and longer to recover. So your brains, this is your expertise more than mine, but your brain's just is wired differently. So therefore, you have to put more effort in than extroverts. But being an extrovert doesn't suddenly entitle someone to be on stage or doesn't suddenly mean that they're any good. Like you said, I've worked with loads of introverted speakers and it just takes them longer to recover and more time to get ready, right? So I just think it's important to say that because you mentioned, oh, I think I'd love to do that, but I'm not sure I could, or I'm an introvert and it's not for me. And whatever's going for the listener's mind when they think of standing on stage, and I think if they just understood that it just takes them that longer to get ready and longer to recover, more introverts might do it. Um, and so some of the speakers I do work with, they tend to be expert speakers, a bit like yourself, a bit like a lot of people that you and I know. They're people that have a particular expertise in something and they have something to say for a community, for an industry, in terms of put something out there, right? So it's not someone that goes, "Oh, I just love being on stage. I just want to, inspire people." I get that. I get that as well. But they have more to them than just, "I want to be on stage. I want to make loads of money. I want to speak in front of 1,000 people." There's lots of people that like that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not who I work with. So the people I tend to work with have a message, and they have a message that they want people to hear. They have a message because it will empower, it will elevate people, it will help educate people, it will help transport people, it will help lift people up and change people for the better, right? So you work with a lot of introverted business owners, and they have a certain way of being, a certain way of showing up, a certain way of conducting themselves. You, with your expertise, have something to say to those people. That's where I come in.
Yeah. And I think with introverts, we had a great conversation about this with Damien Gauthier, who is the curator of TEDx Lausanne,
Uh-huh.
more than a year ago now. But he was saying that what he sees with introverted speakers is they have a message, they know what they want to say, but then it's too concise. So it's like
Ah,
building that out so that it has the flow and the story and everything. That's what they need. Whereas with extroverts, they have a clear message, but they've put so much in that it's lost. So with them, it's stripping things back so the message comes across clearly. And I thought that was quite interesting. And
yeah, it's an interesting distinction.
yeah, and that kind of resonated with me because I know it's taken a while. I think I started Toastmasters 20 years ago, so it's taken 20 years on the journey to kind of really start learning how to take a story from my life and make that meaningful and make it apply to certain concepts. And actually that it's okay to share these stories. That's what has the impact. And it took the longest time to kind of reach that point. Have you got any tips for like feeling comfortable with their stories and knowing where to start and find them?
Yeah, I think first things first about the nerves. I think nerves get a bad rap, right? And the way I've said this to my 8-year-old daughter recently, and I say this to all the speakers, nerves means you care. So don't be afraid of nerves. What you might want to have is coping strategies you to manage your nerves. And I just come back from Scotland doing a talk out there. And before going on stage, someone said, we were talking. I was like, oh, I'm a bit nervous. And they're like, you get nervous? I'm like, yeah, of course I get nervous. And I said, the day I don't get nervous is the day I'm going to stop speaking because it means I don't care anymore. So I want to say that to everybody listening and all the introverts out there that it's okay to be nervous. But what I do have is coping strategies. So I have ways to manage my nerves. And that's where people like yourself come in. And there's all kinds of tools out there. Those who want to feel comfortable on stage. So someone who's introverted has to work that little bit harder, right, to get comfortable. So what I would say is first things first is make sure you've really rehearsed the talk. And People want authenticity. We live in an age where people want real people. They don't want a polished off, speaker anymore. That is good for certain circles, but actually they want to see that little bit of rawness, that little bit of emotion, or that little bit of tension, or that little bit of Hollywood that kind of creates a bit of drama, but not in a hammy pantomime way, right? In a way that's endearing, in a way that's enrolling, in a way that's entertaining in a sense, right? Because it keeps you engaged, it keeps you educated. And the other thing, of course, is we're very distracted. It's very easy for the moment something's not interesting to reach for your phone and go, oh, let me check WhatsApp, let me check emails. So for someone that wants to get comfortable, I would really spend time rehearsing, right? Really rehearsing and to unpack, right? Because when we stand on stage, we're standing on stage because we want to communicate something to an audience. We want them to listen. We want them to keep their attention. So unpacking the elements that are relevant for the audience, and that's key. Storytelling. The problem is a lot of us tell the story that we like to tell, but that's not necessarily what the audience need to hear or what's relevant for the audience. So unpacking the parts that will hit their heart, hit their head, without it being dramatic or sad. That's not a necessity to make an impact as a speaker. So really unpack what are the things that are relevant for that audience? What are the things that are going to hit the heartstrings? What are the things that are going to hit the headstrings? Practice delivering that. Deliver in a way that's authentic, not in a way that you think that you should show up, in a way you're expected to show up, in the way that you would show up. How would Melitta show up and do that, right? How does Elliot show up and do that? Not how you think Elliot should show up because that other speaker did it that way. So really rehearse that. The other thing to get comfortable is to have what I would call a pre-performance ritual. So an hour before, getting up, doing some things that get you ready, whether it be listen to music, whether you use some tools like NLP, EFT, right? To really kind of like get you in calm, more than anything calm, just to get those nerves under control. Because the worst thing you can do is be sitting there feeling the nerves and they go, and welcome, Melitta, right? And you're like jumping up from your seat. The nerves are kicking in even more now. And then you're on stage having to fight the nerves and start your talk. Give yourselves an hour prep. Maybe introverts might need a bit longer. So you might need an hour and a half prep to get you comfortable, to get those nerves under control. And there's all kinds of techniques you can do to that. And the other thing is, I will just add to this, is tie into a bigger purpose. The whole why are you on stage? Is it enough that you love being on stage? Is it enough you have a message? Maybe. But what if it's about something bigger than that? What if it's about tying it to impacting a whole community, a whole industry? What if it's about completely shifting a paradigm? For me, I do everything I do for my kids. So, by me doing something well, it means I'm serving my children better because it means I have a better experience. I'm a better person. I think I am anyway, for it, because I feel better, right? I'm in a better place and I get better results and I get clients, da, 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 da. So if you tie into a purpose beyond you, then it eliminates the what about me? It's about me. No, it's not. That's the whole point. So those are some things. Rehearse, have a pre-performance ritual, tie into a bigger purpose.
Yeah, I love everything about what you just said. And I see for introverts, and it's not only introverts, I know extroverts are in this
Yeah, of
boat as
course.
well, but when something feels more purposeful and meaningful, it's much easier to push your comfort zone and do what needs to be done, the important things, rather than, as you say, getting caught up with, oh, it's all about me and worrying about that because it's bigger than that. And actually, I've learned that that's a key thing about staving off burnout as well. Burnout is all about if you're doing stuff that doesn't feel meaningful and purposeful. Well, it's not all about, but that's one of the factors. So the more we can really tap into this meaning and how we can have that influence and impact is going to be key. And on the nerves thing, I heard a tip. It was in a book by Caroline, and I can't remember her surname. She wrote a book called Gravitas.
Oh, yeah.
And she was saying, if you're nervous on stage, clench your buttocks, because then your mind thinks you're running away from the bear and your body calms down. And I love that because you get a nice toned backside and nobody else can see.
I might use that as well. I think that's very, very good. I think that's very interesting. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I
I
like the
mean,
idea of having a ritual, something that you can do that you know is going to put you at ease, help you be your best self, and feel confident that you can deliver something really amazing for the audience.
yeah. And just on that point, many years ago on the point of purpose, when you said when you're doing things not on purpose, you burn out. I also think that a lot of depression is because you're not on purpose. When I look back at the period I suffered depression, really bad depression for 9 months, but before moving into Speaker Express, and I wasn't aware I had really bad depression until I obviously came out of it. But the reason when I started to work with a spiritual healer, someone that worked with me on that, you know, it transpired the reason I had depression because I wasn't on purpose. I had a business that was doing well, I had clients, I had money, my daughter was just born, I had a beautiful wife, but I wasn't living a life of purpose. And so therefore I was depressed because there was a gap, there was a hole, and I wasn't fulfilled. Everything wasn't joyful, right? Yes, I was getting results, yeah, but I wasn't actually doing anything beyond me.
Mm.
And that, at the time I was running a strategy business, so I was still serving people. So you'd think there'd be joy in that. But it wasn't until I started to work on why am I depressed? Like, what's going on? Why am I here? Because on the face of it, I had everything except buying a house. I had money. I had beautiful wife. I still got a beautiful wife, beautiful child. She's still beautiful. But like, why would anyone hit depression? Well, because I wasn't living a life of purpose.
Yeah.
Exactly what you're talking about. So some people burn out. Some people end up depressed. I've experienced both for various reasons, not the same reasons. But, now when I look back, and even now when I'm starting to consolidate my life a lot more, I start to look at the joy ratio. How much joy will something bring me? And I'm getting to that place now. Well, if it's not pretty much 100% joy, then I'm going to stop doing it. And, so what you say is spot on in terms of being on purpose when
Yeah.
speaking as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In my first business, I had a similar situation where I was running my business for 8 years. I was writing and doing consultancy for some of the most influential leaders in the world. So I was really working at a high level, having a lot of impact effectively, but it wasn't my purpose. And I was getting paid extremely well. I could work flexibly. And so it was ticking all the boxes, apart from it did nothing for me. It wasn't giving me joy and energy. So I came very close to burnout and mini depression. Now I look back at it, you realize,
Right.
as you said, oh, that's why I couldn't get out of bed for months. So yeah, and that sense of contribution to the world is so important, and I think it gets overlooked too much. So I'm glad you've raised that point.
You technically raised it. I didn't technically. You did. I just backed you up on
Thank you.
it.
Um, but yeah, I mean, speaking can be an amazing way to do that. But equally, if speaking doesn't bring you joy, then you don't have to do this as just one of the
No.
ways. But it can be really impactful. And I was really surprised as someone who grew up very shy and introverted, just how much I enjoy it. But it has taken a long time. And so I joined Toastmasters 20 years ago. And
Hmm.
then about 10 years ago, I started my own club. And because I'd started the club, if I didn't speak every single meeting, no one else knew what the hell the club was about. So I
Oh,
had to
right.
speak. So it was brilliant. But my feedback, because when you go to Toastmasters, you always get feedback on your talks. After 18 months of speaking in front of an audience every 2 weeks, my feedback was, this is the first time you haven't turned red.
Wow. It took a while then.
It took a long time. And I'm still doing it. I'm still doing this podcast as well to keep pushing that comfort zone and making
Yeah.
sure that I feel comfortable, because otherwise I know I will slip back and just never do it again. But when I'm in the zone and I can deliver a talk that feels meaningful and purposeful, it's just, yeah, there's no experience quite like it.
Yeah. And I think that's a great example of perseverance. But, I think also a lot of people have this kind of like dream romanticism around speaking. I'll get on stage, everyone love me, and I'll just blow out the water. And as you and I know, there's a lot more that goes on to being a world-class speaker, to being a high-level speaker, right? And it takes time and is like anything, it's a lifetime worth of learning.
Mhm.
Sure, we can get to an implementation stage, we can get to the point where we just do talks for a while, but then you regroup and you go, okay, what can I do better? What can I refine? How can I elevate? For you, it took 18 months to stop going red, right? But for a lot of people, it's going to take a lot longer, or some people can do it a lot quicker, but then it doesn't stop. And I think you're a great example because you've kept going back, kept going back, kept going back. Regardless, you could have given up and go, oh, I'm fed up of being red. I don't want to be red anymore. Right. Bye bye, Toastmasters. And I think that's a great example that also progress happens in small measurements. We're addicted to this whole big impact, big results, get on stage, thousands of people, big bucks, and actually things happen incrementally. Is it the Fibonacci effect that nature grows at 0.000 something,
Yeah.
Okay, we speaking's a bit quicker than that, but it takes time, and people just think, well, because I speak every day, because I speak on the phone, how hard is it to? I don't even people speak on the phone anymore. I speak on Zoom. How hard can it be to get on stage? Well, it's like anything; it needs time, investment, energy, and continuous growth. And I think that's a great example of it. What you
Yeah.
just shared.
Thank you. And something else that you said that I wanted to just touch on was you were talking about how you can stand on stage, present your story in a way that hits people's heads, but also their hearts.
Yes.
And this is something that I see is missing from a lot of people's talks, that they've put a lot of time and effort constructing something that is wonderful, really informative, very well researched, very well delivered,
Yeah.
but there's no emotional connection there. The heart part is missing, particularly when it's a corporate talk. You see it all the
Yeah.
time that they don't step into that emotion. Do you have any advice on how to think about constructing a talk that also takes into consideration how people think, feel, and do through your talk and not just have them listening?
Yeah. I can't remember what book this quote's from, but people remember how you made them feel, not what you said, right?
That's
So
Maya Angelou, I
there
think.
we go. So I think what's really important is you've got to understand that even though people are sitting down to watch you speak, we're also watching you feel, or we feel you, right? So when you're thinking of a story, I think one of the key aspects is relevancy to the audience. It's not the story you like to tell, it's a story that's relevant for the audience. That's a big thing. That's so important. So even in a corporate gig, a corporate setting, you're talking to people in a building. You're still talking to people, even if it's a corporate gig, right? Because they're corporate doesn't suddenly mean they're giraffes. That you're still speaking to people, right? It just happens to be in a corporate setting. So relevancy is important. The other thing when I work with people as well is when we're looking at stories, we're looking at emotional layering. What's the emotion we want them to feel? Now, that doesn't mean that we want them to cry, sob. It can be light laughter, it can be joy, it can be sadness, but you need to consciously think of what is it you want to engineer as a speaker. So the other thing is to think, what's the emotional layering? Now, again, you don't need to do this pantomime or cheesy. It's just certain ways of delivering that will evoke that. Certain imageries you use, certain language you use, certain pauses, certain tonality. That's how you would engineer that. And again, not in a manipulative way. We don't like that, do we? We don't like manipulative. In a way that will evoke emotion. That's what you say. What's the emotional layering? Relevancy, emotional layering. And then it's about delivery. Now, one of the biggest tips I can give everybody listening to this, stop narrating your story and tell it first person. You know, I did this and then I went here and then they opened the door and then it smacked me in the face and then ouch and da 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 da. Go into first person, tell it from first person, show the door hitting you in the face, practice it so it doesn't look hammy. Do the ouch, feel the pain, right? And be present to the story, right? Don't act it. Something I talk about is acting versus being. Be present. Of course, you can narrate some of it, but some of it, step into it. Tell the story as if you're talking to someone, you look at someone, things like that. It makes all the difference. Most people won't go there because they think it looks ridiculous, because it looks cheesy, because it looks hammy. So they don't do it. They narrate a story and then they just look plain speakers. Actually, you want to stand out. That's the kind of thing that gets you to stand out. And so, yeah, an introvert can easily do that too. Just being an introvert doesn't mean you can't be an amazing storyteller. The other thing, of course, introvert doesn't mean you have to move around or be, I'm very animated. That's just my style. I see a lot of introverted speakers that stand on a spot and they hold the room and they do everything through presence. You can develop that presence. It's called executive presence, right? It's a big stage presence. It's commanding a room. You can do that. You just need to practice doing it. So relevancy, emotional layering, first person telling. Those are your three big tips.
Yes,
Ciao.
we love tips.
We love tips,
Um,
don't we?
and actually, one of the most memorable talks I've ever seen. It was just genius, and I don't think he intended it this way, or for it to be as funny as it was. But it was by a local postman. He lives up in the mountains in this tiny little village, and he stood there and told his story of his lifetime delivering post to the people in this village, and how very often he was the only connection. He saved people's lives. He helped people get to
Wow.
the hospital when they were delivering a baby, all of this kind of thing. But he did the whole thing, and he was just like, his hands were stuck to his side, and he was like a pencil.
Yeah. A pencil. Yeah.
He didn't move at all the entire way through his talk. But it was just hilarious and so heartwarming
Hmm.
because of his stories. And he was so connected. And you said he was reliving those stories as he was telling them, and you really felt that connection. So yeah, it was great. But I think find your own style, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken, right? That whole thing. Um, I think that's so important when we talk about authenticity, when we talk about connection, and you talked about, often introverts kind of just they need pulling out versus extroverts need pulling in. I think find your style that works. I did work with a lady, her name not too long was Mary Jane. She was one of our clients. She was massively introverted, so she found her way of expressing herself. She found stories to tell. She'd bring in props because that would help her tell the story. She'd actually sometimes put on costumes, not full costume, just things she can take on, take off. Because also she felt it gave her license to step into a different part of herself. That's what I talk about when I talk about the 12 archetypes, right? It's that different aspect of yourself. And sometimes you might need to just change a jacket or put something on. But the key is with this, Melita, is people need to practice it. Otherwise, it does come across as cheesy or hammy and it doesn't work. It's clunky. So that's what I talk about the importance of practice, 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 right?
Yeah, exactly. It's so key. So when it comes to professional speaking, and
Hmm.
if people want to do more speaking, get out more, if they've got a great talk, what role does recognition play in amplifying the influence that they can have?
I think you and I will know that recognition comes in all different forms, not all forms, different forms, right? So in my space, obviously, the Speaker Awards is one way to get recognition. I set that up to put the spotlight on great speakers who are out there. Lots of organizations have their own awards, right? By getting recognition, it means that you've been through some form of process that other people have gone, you are good, right? So in the Speaker Awards case, people enter their stuff, there's judges, these judges have gone, this person's good, and then they've decided this person wins. It's a snapshot. Does it mean everyone else that didn't win isn't good? No, it just means this person stood up from the rest. So I think recognition is very important in the world we live in because as much as you and I might go, ugh, this and ugh, that, people want people that have got results. People want people that have authority and people that want people that can stand there with conviction, not because they've learned to be convincing, because what they've done has conviction. And recognition's a big part of that. So yeah, so in the UK and going global soon, we've got the Speaker Awards. But of course, if your book's a bestseller, that's recognition. If you have an engaged following that genuinely engage with you because of what you have to say, that can be recognition. So there's various ways to get recognition. It's not one way, and I think it does depend on the industry, right? Certain industries, you'll only get recognition if you have BCM, CCM, DGG, ja 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 by your name, right? Because that means you've spent the time to get these qualifications, this accreditation. That gives you recognition. I mean, a doctorate's a recognition, right? It means you've sat there and worked very hard to get a PhD. I don't mean medical doctorate. That also is recognition. So there's various ways you can get recognition, but it's so important as a speaker to get recognition as well, because you could have the best story in the world. If no one's hearing it, no one's booking you, then you've got zero recognition. And of course, as a speaker, one of the ways you get recognized is by multiple bookings and what people are willing to pay you. That's another form of recognition as well.
Yeah. And when it comes to having these recognitions, so say someone won your speaker awards or they
Uh
have a
huh.
best-selling book, whatever, it's one thing having this, but then telling people about it sometimes they can something I struggle with asking
Yeah.
for myself. Do you have any ways you've seen people use this recognition in ways that don't feel braggy or pushy or anything like that, but very authentic and actually then lean into their style of influence and impact as well?
Yeah. I think, of course, you can have it on your various profiles. So it doesn't mean you're going, I am the speaker of the year. It just says speaker of the year 2024, right?
Mhm.
So there's various ways you can add it. And I do see a lot of people forget that. They're like, I say to people, for example, why don't you go speak a website on your LinkedIn as one of your jobs? You go, oh, what, well, it's one of the things you do. Why wouldn't you have that on there? So I think one way is to add it to your profile, so to speak. Another way you can do it without it being braggy is to talk about, you know, when you got recognized, how you felt about being recognized, talking about, oh, I didn't feel like I should win or not. So there's ways you can use content around your award, for example. Um, and actually, the people that I see that have done very well since winning a award don't brag. They don't need to because it's there. So if you look at Benita, who won Storyteller of the Year 2024, she's doubled the amount of booking. She's increased her fees. She's close to doing over 100 speaking opportunities this year alone. And that's come from, no, I think she's already fairly established before, but that's accelerated. So she has some beautiful voice now. And if you look at her profile, there's no showing off, right? It's just present. So that's some of the ways. Sure, there's people that brag about it, but there's ways to be clever about it. Like I mentioned, by the content you create, by putting on your profile. Of course, another way to do it, Melita, is to get people to talk about you. That's another form of recognition. But of course, other people going, Melita won Speaker of the Year. You should talk to her, and that's another form that you can utilize as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I think that you really highlighted something there that people don't put their achievements just there like a logo on their LinkedIn banner or in their tagline, or as you say, as a separate job on their CVs kind of section, which
Yeah,
I've done for everything. And I was like, I'm going to have to stop adding things now. It looks a bit ridiculous. But yeah, so I love those tips. Thank you.
you're welcome.
And you mentioned about going from having a talk and giving a talk to having a talk that creates a difference, that is
Mm.
transformative in some way. Is there anything else that makes a talk go from something that's, oh, that was nice, an enjoyable experience, to something that's really going to have a lasting impact, that's going to last beyond the applause?
Yeah, I think some key aspects of that is to challenge people's paradigms, people's model of the world, people's perception, right? So that's something that would have an impact. That when you leave an audience thinking or doing something differently as a result of hearing you spoke, for the better, by the way, right? Not for the worse, that's gonna have an impact. That's kind of a key aspect to when you speak. So, when I was in Scotland, I was doing why every business owner should be speaking. And, I delivered it in my fun, normal way, but actually I could see people really starting to think about the impact of speaking when they wasn't. And afterwards, the conversation, I got them to really question their whole approach to speaking and why they're not speaking. And because again, there's that romantic notion around speaking. It has to be big. It has to be in front of thousands of people. And I was like, actually, no, you can speak in front of 10 people and have an impact. So if you challenge your audience and you get them to do something a different way, then that's the talk worth giving. It doesn't have to be a Gandhi type movement, right? It can be something small, something incremental that they change. And again, people are addicted to size, like it's got to be big, it's got to be shifted, it's got to change their lives. No, what if they just took out one key thing that on the long term stopped them having diabetes? I don't know, just as an example.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that things don't happen in big breakthroughs. They come from these little moments. So if you can help your audience have those little moments, then that's going to be the step to a bigger transformation afterwards as well.
Exactly. So the talks that you're talking about that go beyond entertaining and nice to hear are the challenge that get you thinking, that question, and also get you ideally doing something differently. And that's a key difference.
Yeah, which comes back to your idea of the hearts and the minds, really
Yeah,
looking at the whole package together. Mhm.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look, if you're doing a talk about the latest zero software and how to apply that, I mean, I would suggest you have funny stories anyway, because it's probably a pretty lame, not lame, sorry, it's not fair, probably dry, I should say, dry topic. But, the space we're in, the experts we tend to come across and work with are people that, are there because they care about something. And so if you're only applying to the head, then it's heady. If you're only applying to heart, it's too emotional. You need to find the balance. And that's why I talk about applying, you know, reaching people's hearts and minds, because the two combined is much more powerful and more likely to get results, right? So even again, depends on the therapist, but cognitive behavioral, right? CBT has its effect, but it's very heady, right? It can detach from emotion, even though thought create, they do the whole thought. Because I studied cognitive behavioral hypnotherapy, it's still very much on your thinking, and it's disrupting your thinking and giving your thinking structure. But there's a whole different side to, now some CBT does address the emotion, and then other therapies only address the emotion, not CBT. But so when you work with the two together, and then you add your soul and spirit, right, together, then you're more likely to have an impact and affect change, because you're working with a whole human being, not a part of a human being. Same with your talk. That's what you want. You want to get them thinking, get them feeling, get them doing, get them changing.
I love that. And I'd love to touch on that talk you were just saying, because of course this audience is mostly business owners. Why
Yeah.
should business owners be out there speaking? Let's leave the audience inspired to get out there.
Absolutely. Well, several reasons. Number one, it's one of the quickest and I'd say easiest ways to create trust. When people can see and feel you, it's very different from watching you on social media, and anything like. So that's number one. It's the quickest, I think, the best use of an hour in terms of marketing. If I've got 10 business owners or 100 business owners, in a room for an hour, that's 100 hours I've just gained, because there's 100 of you and we're spending an hour together. If I'm creating connection and trust, then they have access to me immediately as well. It immediately elevates you as a business owner, as an expert. You still have to do a good job, by the way. So that's the other reason why. And of course, the other thing is we still crave connection. So yes, we've gone into a digital world, and yes, we've gone into an AI world, and yes, you and I, as we're recording this over a platform. But people still crave that connection. They want to feel, they want to see, they want to know, they want to, really be present to that moment where we're in room. And if you are an accountant that talks about zero software and you're in front of 10, 20 business owners, you'll probably gain more clients that way than spending that time on social media, right? And that's why every business owner should speak.
Yeah, I love all of those points. And I think the connection and the being real, I mean, if you're standing there speaking to people, you can't fake that. And as AI takes off and more things were like, is that AI? Is that not AI? As it gets cleverer, you're going to create that trust and belief that you are who you say you are, and you can deliver what you say you deliver, because you can't fake that energy as well. And that's, I learned through my work in corporate communications and leadership communications, that vulnerability draws people in, but it's really the energy that you put out that people judge more than anything. So if you are passionate about your topic, you've prepared well, and it's really you being you, then that's so powerful. And as I say, I think that's just going to become more and more important.
Yeah, and I think also the other thing to remember, if you're not on stage, someone else is, and they probably don't care as much as you. So it's kind of one of them. Look, is it for everybody? No. Should every business owner? Ideally, of course, yes. Is there room for everybody? Yes. But it's not for everybody, right? And again, as a business owner, this is what I was saying to the people in Scotland. I was like, look, you don't have to be in front of thousands of people. You can just be doing your local Toastmaster, for example, or the likes of local business networking. You speak in front of 20 people once a week. But if you just got one or two clients from that, would that not be enough on a regular basis? And it's one of the quickest ways that, I get people from LinkedIn wanting to work with me, and it's a long journey. It's a book a call, and then we have a call, and then they think about it. And then once they think about it, we have another call, right? It can be long. Equally, it can be quick. But when you speak, people pretty much make their mind once they've seen you speak, and it's a yay or a nay. So I spoke in Scotland on Monday. Today, someone signed up to work with me, and it was more of a confirmation call more than anything. It can accelerate things. The other thing, of course, the advantage of speaking is once someone sees you speak, they can go, oh, I saw that person speak. You should consider booking them, or you should consider working with them. So it's that ripple effect or the butterfly effect, whichever one you choose.
I have the kaleidoscope effect.
There we go, the kaleidoscope effect. I
Like
like
when you have a diamond and the light hits it and it refracts off in different directions, and you just never know how far that light is going to go, but when it lands, it creates this beautiful rainbow. So I like to think of it that way.
Absolutely. I love that. I love kaleidoscopes too.
Elliot, thank you so much. We could talk about this all day.
True.
And one thing you do talk about, which can really help people experiment and find their style and have more presence on stage, is your archetypes. We haven't got time to dive into those, but is that something that people can find on YouTube? Do you talk about that anywhere else?
It's a really good question. And the second person to ask me that. There's not a lot of me talking about archetypes. There's some on my website, elliot.com. There's a couple of demo videos on there. There is on my YouTube channel, I believe there is me talking on a webinar about the archetypes. But besides that, no, I should really make more of that.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe we can publicly say right now, you heard it here. Elliot's writing a book on.
Oh, I don't know. I do feel there's book 7 coming on. I mean, I've written the 7th book. It's sat on my laptop, but it's not a book I want to release. I think we talked about that.
Mm,
I am sitting there thinking about book number 7. So maybe within that, I'll address the 12 archetypes as well. I just have to gear up to really get that momentum, as you know, to write the book. And right now, there's just a lot of things that are pulling me in different directions. I'm not sure I want to add the layer of a book as well yet.
yeah.
Yet.
Yeah.
You've heard it here first that there will be a 7th.
And
But
Elliot will be back when it's published to tell us all about
exactly, we can talk about it. Absolutely.
it. Thank you so much. You've shared so much value. Before we sign off, is there anything that you feel we haven't touched on that would be really beneficial for the audience to know to help them start taking those first steps to becoming or seeing if being a speaker could be the right strategy for them to have that influence, grow their audience, and grow their business?
Yeah, so I think the influencer test I have on my website might be a good one. You know, they get a report, it gives them a mark. So I'll send you the link for that. And do reach out to me on LinkedIn, say hello, add me, Elliot Kay, spelled the correct way, Elliot Kay, no E, no double T, right? Spelled properly. I didn't mean to rhyme that. That's pretty cool. I should do that more often. And that's how people can find out more about me.
Amazing. Elliot, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have found this episode insightful and valuable, and you're all set to confidently step onto that stage, share your message, and grow your business and influence. If you have enjoyed this episode, then please do let me know what your key takeaway has been. You can drop me a note on LinkedIn. I'm at Melitta with 2 T's. And I'd love it if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps more people to find the show and benefit from all the amazing wisdom that my guests have shared. And if you would like to go deeper into how you can find your message and confidently share it through impactful marketing that feels aligned with your values and the experience and difference that you want to create for your clients, then the Value Whispering Blueprint is my step-by-step program to help you do just that. You'll find the link in the show notes, but you can go right now to valuewhispering.com and you'll find the details there, and you can book a call and we can have a chat about your business, where you're at today, where you'd like to get to, and if the Value Whispering Blueprint could be the right program for you to achieve aligned business growth. Until next time, remember, success isn't about who shouts loudest, but who resonates deepest. I'm Melitta Campbell, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.